everyone. Thank you for coming to my talk today. I'm Mandy Schafer, and I'm a product marketing manager. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about PLG to enterprise growth and my experience around how to transition product marketing efforts. So this is Miro that I'm using, and that's the company I currently work for. So a little bit about me and my latest projects. I'm currently based in Amsterdam, Netherlands, but for the past 12 years or so, I've been working out of the San Francisco Bay Area. I started my career actually at IBM accidentally. I wanted to be a financial analyst at a bank, but the only company that looked at my resume was a tech company. And so I ended up as a financial analyst at IBM. But I slowly realized that marketing was actually my passion, and I went back to school to get an MBA. However, as hard as I tried to get into the consumer marketing world, like Unilever or Coca-Cola, I always ended up back at the tech companies. And I ended up actually as a product marketing manager at Oracle. And that's where I learned everything about PMM, from positioning and messaging to traditional B2B enterprise product marketing. I've been basically doing top-down enterprise PMM almost my entire career. So we're talking long sales cycles, marketing the CIOs, focusing on adoption and usage after the sale, and basically how to market to very, very large companies. However, this kind of all got turned upside down when I got a job working at Dropbox and now at Miro. Just a little bit about PLG. So at Miro and Dropbox, I've had the unique opportunity to be part of a business model that companies that rarely experience, and it's called the PLG model. So how does that work? Is a PLG to enterprise growth model are companies that have had great success with their end users and are trying to expand into the enterprise. So what needed to be done? How do we do it? And how have we accomplished what we have? So in this talk, I'm going to go through some of the experience that I've had growing the enterprise side of the businesses at PLG companies. So what exactly is PLG? Like I mentioned before a little bit, it's an end user driven model. From a product marketing standpoint, it's a bottoms up approach, which basically means your users are the ones that drive a lot of the marketing and growth within the company. So PLG companies spend a lot of their time on end user research, and it's almost similar to a consumer company like Uber or DoorDash. And you look at what brings more people into the product and how to keep them engaged so they continue to use that. And so how does enterprise play in all of this? So for an enterprise in the PLG world, as users discover the product either by word of mouth or just from downloading a free trial, they love it and then they ask their IT for it. This happened at Dropbox years ago, and that's where the term shadow IT really came upon. And this term essentially means like almost going behind your IT's back to download free versions and using the technology because they loved it so much. But this is not a great user model for IT managers. And so we wanted to interject a proper methodology of getting into the enterprise and doing it in a way that we would be friendly with IT and making sure that they are approved and using our products in the way an enterprise should be using. As a PLG model starts to expand into larger companies, you really need to kind of go back and think about a little bit of the traditional PMM methods used in enterprise models and how your target moves from an end user side to the IT side and the admin side. So I'll talk a little bit about how we did that. So the first thing for me is learning to coexist and not compete. Having come from the enterprise world, I really needed to understand what I was getting into. For a long time, Dropbox and even Miro has been very used to building and messaging and only targeting the end user. It's almost like a consumer company. You find a lot of people doing end user research and all these different departments have been very tailored to growing and getting end user acquisition. So almost everyone at the company has been working this way, and you can't just come in and try and change their mindset and say, okay, now we're an enterprise company and we need to change all that. So I had to really work on getting accustomed to building and messaging, and understanding why the end user was important, and coexist with them, not compete. Um, and I did this by getting internal and executive buy-in to really understand, this is the difference between an end user growth strategy, and this is what happens with executive. And together, coexisting is super powerful. We've always been working on trying not to cannibalize each other, but when you actually think about it and you leverage and work with each other, what happens is you get a very strong land and expand model. And this is where the end users actually help you land the deals. And it's not even where you had to depend on your sales team. You already have this uh, done for you because your end users love it so much. And that's when you start building upon the enterprise requirements and tactics that you need to expand the deals and continue to have your customers keep using your product. So what happens when you're starting to target the enterprise? Well, in this case, what happens is you're getting a new target audience. The admin is a neglected target audience that I ran into at PLG companies, and it's really easy to see why. The company had been focused so long on working on end user features that they don't really spend much time on how to manage these users, or focus on the people that do. And these messages are very, very different. Often the admins aren't even the people that use your product at all, but are essentially forced to manage your product because the end users have demanded to use it. So how do you message and market to the admin? So this is when I went back to my traditional B2B PMM days at Oracle and at Autodesk, where all I did was traditional B2B go-to-market strategy. How that works is you sell it into IT, you convince them the value of your product, and then you help the admins to sell and get adoption across the company. So this is your top-down approach. At Miro and Dropbox, it's the exact opposite. You've got adoption, you've already sold the value of your product. So now you got to sell back to IT as to why they need to continue investing in your product. And when you sell into the enterprise, you need to start thinking about the scale and volume of the users that you'll have to deal with. This was a lesson that I learned at one of the startups I was at. We had landed a huge deal and we were so excited to have everyone start using the product. But then we realized how complicated it was to onboard hundreds of people a day and get thousands of people up and ready to use within a week. We'd never done this before, and we ended up resorting to hours of just uploading CSV files of emails, and we learned our lesson. Like, we needed to build these admin capabilities. So with the large amounts of users onboarded, there's also the process of managing their licenses, upgrading and downgrading them, and what is the message for that? How do you talk to admins, and how do you talk about dealing with all these users and making sure that different departments are understanding the value of your product? So this is when, with this new audience, you need to really think through kind of their day-to-day life, how they're dealing with billing systems, cost centers, and things we never took into account when we were just building for the end user. So after you've talked to the admins and you kind of convince them that the product is manageable and they can continue to let their users use it, there's another problem. You'll not problem, but another thing to really think about, and it's about being enterprise grade ready from a security and compliance standpoint. So what makes something compliant? These are things you don't really think about when you are building your product from an end user standpoint, other than the product is secure when you use it. At an enterprise level, a lot of these companies are public and they need to actually meet certain SEC requirements, and the content they create at their company needs to be compliant. If your product doesn't allow them to do this, then they can't use it. And from a PMM standpoint, I spent a lot of time building these foundational frameworks and collateral to talk about our security. At companies at Oracle, these were given. We always had these set up for us, and but at a PLG company, as you're expanding into the enterprise, most of your marketing team has been focused on end user benefits, and oftentimes these type of foundational things need to still be built out. To do this, the traditional end user methods don't really work. This is when I actually had to look internally and ask, hey, we have our own compliance and security teams. Why don't we ask them how they protect their companies, and interviewed them alongside some of the customers that we had in the space to help build our teams and roadmap around what to build next. So at the end of the day, you also need to figure out, do you want to build everything? Like you have to remember your company. What are you and where did you come from? At Miro, we are really good at what we do because we have really great whiteboard capabilities, and allow users to collaborate the way they want to. But we're not a security company, nor should we really try to be one, right? We don't want to spend all our engineering energy around working around threat management and data loss prevention. And there's actually a lot of vendors out there that excel at that. So we constantly evaluate whether or not we should partner or build or optimize, to optimize on what we're focusing on. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in our next slide, or in the final slide. So this is a little bit around our go-to-market tactics. So once you've kind of figured out your product strategy and what you want to build, and how you want to message it from a product marketing standpoint, how do you go to market? And this is where years of being at large companies helped me, and my experience with account-based marketing when I was at Demandbase. So when you're selling to the enterprise, it's a whole different way of go-to-market. The benefit that you have is the strength of of your product being product-led growth on your side, and the viral usage of it through word of mouth, and also a strong community. These are only things that I could have dreamed of when I was at my large B2B company. Like word of mouth or going viral for an enterprise product was unheard of. So now, as a PMM, what do you do with this power that you have? You really need to expand on it, right? So you've already got the end user focus. There's people talking about your product. Continue to do 360 marketing, where you're not just talking to the you're not just focusing on what the end users are talking about. We need to start bringing in some of the traditional B2B marketing focuses as well. And that means targeting the CIOs and CTOs, and talking about the new way of working, or the fact that your product is not just a trendy tool that end users are excited about. There's a true value to it, and figure out what this true value is, and what is the future of the tool. Why should CIOs and CTOs invest in you? Is it worthy of paying the amounts that they usually pay for enterprise tools? So these are all things you really need to focus on. And this is where you also work with analysts, and you work with influencers. You build out your case studies, and write out the ebooks, and with the customers and all the partners that have seen success in your company. And you put together these campaigns around long-term benefits of your solution, and target the key accounts that you want to, and start continuing to build on that as you land more and more strategic accounts. So then the last point I want to talk about is you've built the right tools that you need for the enterprise. You figured out how to market and keep bringing in more enterprises. How do you make sure that people stay? So you've got adoption from your end users, but at the end of the day, from a technology standpoint, what do you need to do? And that's where I like to talk about not being a walled garden. When you expand into the enterprise, you can't just be on your own island, right? You are now part of this group of enterprise grade tools. You need to play nice with everyone else that's already out there. And this includes legacy tools that these companies have already invested years in. You're the new kid on the block now, and no one's going to just spend all their time on you managing your product, managing these new features and capabilities. So what do you need to do? As a PMM, I've had to build strong ecosystem message as well. So this includes the stories around how you connect with the existing tech stacks, and how you help enterprise customers understand that you're in this in the long run. So opening up APIs for them, being able to provide them the capabilities to build and connect to their other tools, so that you're not just on your own island and you become part of the other tools that are already in the tech stack. So we found that the more integrations your product has, the stickier you will be at companies, and the more your product is used with other products, the longer it'll stay as a product with your customer. So that's basically my presentation today around how I manage PLG and enterprise together. I'd really like to thank you all for listening to my presentation. Hope you were able to get some good takeaways from my experience. It's always been a pleasure speaking, and I hope to connect with some of you on LinkedIn. We're also hiring a ton at Miro, so if you're looking for something exciting and new, I encourage you to apply, and hopefully you'll join me in Amsterdam. So thank you.